The most dangerous thing about being highly intelligent is this. Your mind is too good at convincing you that it has everything under control. Your greatest strength can quietly become your most destructive weapon. Carl Jung spent decades studying the minds of gifted intellectual people, and what he found alarmed him, not because they were broken, but because they were brilliant in exactly the wrong direction. There is a specific psychological crossing point that Jung described, a moment when the thinking mind stops serving you and begins consuming you. I will reveal exactly what that crossing point looks like later in this video, and when I do, you will recognize yourself in it. Brilliant but imprisoned. By the end of this video, you will understand why overthinking is not a superpower. It is a form of psychological poverty, and you will know exactly what Jung believed every intelligent person must do to escape it. There is something deeply seductive about being a thinker. Every problem gets analyzed, every emotion gets dissected, every conversation replayed, reviewed, and reinterpreted 10 times over. And somewhere in that cycle, the mind begins to believe it is helping, when in reality it is slowly taking over. Jung noticed something striking about his most intellectually gifted patients. They were also the most psychologically tortured, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they had too much confidence in it. The brilliant mind begins to believe that thinking is the solution to everything, that if you analyze long enough, deeply enough, you will crack the code of your own life. But what happens when you cannot think your way out of grief, or loneliness, or the hollow feeling that something essential is missing? The mind does what it always does. It thinks harder. It theorizes, categorizes, rationalizes. With every cycle of overthinking, you move further from what could actually help you. Jung called this unreachable part the unconscious. Not a mystical concept, but a living dimension of your psychology containing instincts, memories, emotions, and a form of intelligence your rational mind simply cannot access. And here is what no one tells you. The smarter you are, the more confidently you dismiss it. Smart enough to ignore wisdom. But what actually happens when the rational mind begins to dominate everything else? The answer goes darker than most people expect. Most people treat intellect as pure advantage, but stop for a moment. When was the last time thinking actually solved an emotional problem for you, not explained it, not rationalized it, but genuinely freed you from it? Think harder, fix everything. That is the modern mantra, and it is precisely what Jung warned against. He described a psychological type he called the thinking type. Individuals for whom rational analysis dominates all other mental functions. In Jungian psychology, every mind operates through 4 functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Most people develop 1 or 2 strongly, but the highly intelligent tend to hyperdevelop thinking at the expense of everything else, especially feeling and intuition. The result is a mind that can analyze a situation with brilliant clarity but cannot feel its way through it. Jung wrote about patients who could describe their depression with perfect theoretical precision, while being completely unable to move through it. The explanation had become the barrier. The analysis had become the avoidance. If this pattern is resonating with something you recognize in yourself, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me. Because what comes next reveals something even deeper. Something Jung found in the unconscious lives of his most intellectually defended patients, and it changes the entire picture. Now, what I am about to tell you might be the most important psychological insight you have never been formally taught. Logic severs connection, self. There is a quiet internal war happening inside every overthinker, and the thinking function is winning by a landslide when the analytical mind is praised and rewarded. By schools, by employers, by every system that benefits from your rational productivity. It grows dominant, and as it grows, it actively suppresses the other functions. Intuition, your capacity to sense the right direction without knowing why, gets dismissed as irrational. Feeling, your ability to process emotional truth directly, gets labeled as weakness or contamination of clear thinking. Sensation, your grounding in the body, in the physical present, gets neglected in favor of abstract thought. And what happens to the parts of us that get consistently suppressed? They do not disappear, they go underground. What you refuse to own does not vanish. It goes underground and grows stronger. They retreat into the unconscious, and from there, unseen, unnamed, unintegrated, they begin to shape everything. Your relationships, your recurring anxieties, your inexplicable choices, your dreams that repeat without explanation. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So what exactly lives in the unconscious of the person who thinks too much? How does it try to communicate? That is where this conversation becomes genuinely personal. Your unconscious has been trying to reach you, not through dramatic visions or mystical experiences, but through the small, persistent signals you keep dismissing as noise. the restless unease before a decision your mind has already justified, the heaviness in your chest when you are about to say something you do not actually believe, the dream you have had 3 times and never stopped to examine. Body knows before mind decides. Jung called this the compensatory function of the unconscious. The idea that when the conscious attitude becomes too one-sided, the psyche automatically attempts to correct the imbalance. In practical terms, this compensation appears as physical symptoms without clear medical explanation: disturbed sleep, chronic low-level anxiety that feels irrational, but is not, a persistent, unnamed restlessness that no amount of planning or productivity can resolve. The unconscious communicates in the language of emotion, image, and bodily sensation, not logical argument. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And the more you try to think through its messages, the louder they grow. Intelligent people often feel the most lost precisely because they trust thinking above all else. The harder they analyze, the more elusive the answer becomes, because the answer does not live in analysis. It lives in a different kind of attention entirely, and now the pattern reveals its most troubling face, the one that strikes at your very capacity to act and to live. Here is where the story takes a genuinely dark turn, because overthinking does not merely disconnect you from your unconscious. It actively destroys your capacity to live fully. Psychologists call it analysis paralysis, but Jung had a deeper and more disturbing name for it: the intellect deployed as a defense against life itself. When thinking becomes your primary way of relating to the world, every experience becomes data to be processed before it can be felt. Relationships become case studies. Emotions become variables to be managed and controlled. Even joy, pure, spontaneous, unreasoned joy, becomes something to be evaluated before you grant yourself permission to feel it. And here is what is truly disturbing: the more intelligent you are, the more skilled you become at constructing elaborate mental frameworks that justify your own avoidance. You are not procrastinating, you are strategically planning. You are not avoiding vulnerability, you are protecting your emotional resources. You are not refusing to change, you are being appropriately discerning. The mind becomes extraordinarily skilled at defending itself against its own growth. Jung described this as the intellect's ultimate betrayal, using its own power to prevent the very development it claims to seek. Intelligent enough to justify everything. And what is the emotional cost on the person trapped in this cycle? What is quietly dying inside them day after day? The next part of this conversation gets deeply personal, because it is about the face you show the world. Stop and think about this genuinely for a moment. The version of yourself that other people know, is it actually you, or is it a carefully constructed character that your intelligence designed to be respected, accepted, and safe? Jung called this construction the persona, the social mask every person wears. And for intellectually gifted people, the persona is extraordinarily sophisticated. Perfect mask hidden self. Because a brilliant mind can engineer a persona that is almost indistinguishable from genuine personality. The articulate, analytically gifted person who is secretly terrified of being truly known. The competent professional who feels like a profound fraud at 2 in the morning. The person who can explain everyone else's psychology with striking clarity, but who, when sincerely asked how they really are, has absolutely nothing to say, because they have never actually stopped long enough to feel it. The persona is not mere dishonesty. It is a sophisticated psychological defense that intelligence makes dangerously effective. You become so skilled at presenting a coherent, acceptable version of yourself that you gradually lose access to the real one. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The energy required to maintain a false self slowly consumes the life you should be living. And beneath the persona, growing quietly in the darkness of the unconscious, is something Jung considered the most important and most dangerous discovery of his entire career. Now forget everything I just said about the persona for a moment, because what lies beneath it is something Jung considered the single most significant psychological discovery of his career: the shadow. For intellectually dominant people, the shadow takes a particularly ironic form, all the qualities suppressed in service of being rational. Raw anger, spontaneous irrationality, uncontrolled emotion, animal instinct, the freedom to be wrong, the relief of not having all the answers. They do not disappear. They form a powerful counter-personality in the unconscious. And here is the painful paradox: the more energy you invest in being logical, controlled, and analytically superior, the more powerful your shadow becomes. Jung found this pattern with striking consistency. The intellectually rigid patient had the most destructive emotional explosions. The person who prided themselves on never losing control would lose it catastrophically over something small. The person who believed they were beyond petty jealousy would act from jealousy in ways they genuinely could not explain to themselves afterward. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The qualities you reject most fiercely are the ones accumulating the most power over you. Suppressed emotion returns doubled. Every rejected quality accumulates energy in the dark. It waits. But what happens when the shadow finally breaks through? What does a lifetime of suppression look like when it reaches its absolute limit? The next part of this conversation is where it gets genuinely alarming. If you thought that was uncomfortable, this is where it becomes genuinely alarming. Jung had a precise term for what happens when the unconscious has been suppressed long enough by the dominant rational mind: psychological compensation. What he described as the psyche is revenge on its own neglect. Here is the mechanism. The more one-sided the conscious attitude becomes, the more someone insists on being purely rational, purely controlled, purely intellectual, the more violently and precisely the unconscious compensates. A person who has spent decades building an identity around intellectual superiority develops a crushing, inexplicable depression that no amount of analysis can think away. Someone who has mastered every emotional regulation technique falls desperately, irrationally in love with exactly the wrong person and genuinely cannot understand why. A philosopher who has written with brilliant clarity about the irrationality of fear develops a specific phobia so paralyzing it cannot be reasoned away. Deny psyche, face consequences. This is not weakness. This is the whole psyche asserting itself against the tyranny of the rational. The unconscious does not merely want to be understood, it demands to be lived. All of it, not just the respectable, high-functioning parts. The psyche will have its full expression, or it will take that expression from you. And this brings us directly to the psychological crossing point I mentioned at the very beginning. The precise warning Jung gave to the most intelligent people he ever treated. You are about to hear it. This is the moment I promised at the beginning, the psychological crossing point. The crossing. Jung observed that at a certain stage of life, most often between 30 and 50, the intellectually dominant person reaches a crisis that thinking simply cannot solve. They have built careers, relationships, reputations, all through the disciplined application of rational intelligence, and then one ordinary day it stops working. The achievements no longer satisfy. The intellectual stimulation no longer reaches deep enough. The carefully constructed future feels inexplicably, devastatingly hollow. This is not clinical depression. This is not failure. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Jung called it the individuation crisis, an urgent signal from the neglected parts of the psyche, finally demanding inclusion in the life that was built without them. Crisis invitation to wholeness. The crossing point itself is this: the intellect, having dominated for decades, must finally surrender, not to chaos, not to irrationality, but to a deeper intelligence that includes thinking but is not imprisoned by it. Jung called this the transcendent function, the capacity to hold the tension between the rational and the unconscious and allow something genuinely new to emerge from that tension. The crossing point is not the end of the intelligent mind. It is the beginning of the whole self. If you know someone brilliant who is quietly falling apart right now, someone who has every answer and none of the peace, send them this video. Comment crossing if you have stood at this threshold, because the final question, what the integrated mind actually looks like, has a very specific answer, and it is closer than you think. There is a way through, and it does not require you to become less intelligent. It requires you to become more than just your intelligence. Integration means giving every part of yourself the right to exist alongside the rest. This is what Jung called individuation, the lifelong, demanding work of becoming a whole person. For the overthinker, this means something specific and practical. It means learning to notice the felt sense, the quiet knowing in the body, before the mind has a chance to rationalize it away. It means sitting with an emotion without immediately needing to name, categorize, or explain it. It means engaging with dreams, art, or any irrational experience that connects you to the unconscious language of image and symbol. It means taking the persona off in safe moments and allowing yourself to be genuinely seen without the performance. And it means confronting the shadow, not destroying it, not suppressing it further, but recognizing and integrating the parts of yourself you have been too rational to admit are there. Thinking is necessary, not sufficient. This is not mysticism. This is psychology at its most rigorous and most honest. Jung understood that the fully realized human being is not the most logical one, but the most integrated one. The one who can think brilliantly and feel deeply and trust instinct and face darkness without flinching. That is Jung's warning and Jung's gift, given to every intelligent person willing to receive it. You are not just a mind, use all of yourself. Jung did not warn intelligent people to stop thinking. He warned them to stop worshipping their own thinking. Mind servant, not master. The most psychologically whole people are not the ones who silenced their emotions or conquered their instincts. They are the ones who built a genuine, honest relationship with every part of themselves. The rational mind is a magnificent instrument, but an instrument, when it becomes the conductor, destroys the music. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Your intelligence is not the enemy. The belief that intelligence alone is enough. That is precisely what Jung was warning against. You can think brilliantly and also feel deeply. You can analyze with precision and also trust what cannot be analyzed. You can be logical and also be whole. These are not opposites. They are the full range of what it means to be a complete human being. The goal is not to think less, but to live more completely. If you made it this far, prove it. Comment integrated mind below, because the moment you recognize this pattern in yourself is already the beginning of something different. Welcome to the Psyche Project.